killing civilians is a crime. That's exactly what happened here. We have a legal concept for that. It's murder, plain and simple. Hi, I'm Jeff Stein. I'm a staff attorney in the National Security Project here at ACLU National, and I'll be talking about our recent case that we filed on behalf of family members of 2 victims of an illegal lethal strike carried out off the coast of Venezuela. Let's dive into our first question. What has the Trump administration been doing in the Caribbean Sea since fall of last year? Since early September, the Trump administration has been engaging in a series of illegal, lethal strikes on small boats in the Caribbean Sea and the Eastern Pacific Ocean. So far, there have been 36 of these strikes, and they've killed approximately 126 people. President Trump has claimed that the strikes are illegal because we are engaged in what's called a non-international armed conflict with a host of unspecified drug cartels. This is a legal impossibility. Drug trafficking is not armed violence within the meaning of the law of armed conflict. Drug cartels are not the sort of entity that the United States could be in an armed conflict with. They don't have a command structure. They aren't akin to regular armed forces. And drug trafficking isn't armed violence within the meaning of the laws of war. It's a crime, and it's governed by criminal law subject to constitutional protections like due process. So the next question is, what happened on October 14th, 2025 that led to the ACLU's lawsuit? On October 14th, 2 Trinidadian men, Chad Joseph and Rishi Samaru, were killed by the United States government just off the coast of Venezuela. Chad and Rishi had been temporarily doing farm work in Venezuela, and they were looking for a boat ride back home in Las Cuevas, Trinidad, which is a small fishing community in Trinidad. They reached out to their family members just before they got onto the boat and thought they'd see them in just a couple of days. We found out about Chad and Rishi, from media reports in Trinidad, and our legal team went down to try to seek justice on their behalf. All right, so the next question is, why are these strikes not war crimes? This is a great question. The post-World War II international legal order establishes very narrow circumstances where the law of war apply. And these lethal strikes are occurring outside of the context of armed conflict, which means that they're premeditated and intentional killings. We have a legal concept for that. It's murder, plain and simple. All right, the next question is, what should Congress be doing to demand accountability? They should be holding public hearings about these boat strikes. The officials who authorized and carried out these strikes should be testifying under oath, in front of the American people, and providing details and justifications for these lethal strikes. We also think that Congress should be demanding full transparency into the strikes. The Department of Justice has reportedly produced a legal opinion that purports to justify these strikes. The Trump administration has kept that legal memorandum secret. In a separate lawsuit, we're actually suing the Department of Justice to try to get access to that memo. Ultimately, Congress needs to make clear that killing civilians is a crime and to demand accountability for these murders that have been carried out in the American people's name. Okay, so the next question is there even any evidence that these strikes were carried out on drug cartels? No, the Trump administration has not provided any evidence to the American people that there are drugs aboard these boats or that any of the victims of these strikes were engaged in drug trafficking. With respect to the victims at issue in our case, their family members have made clear that they were not members of or affiliated with a drug cartel, and the Trinidadian government has even said that they have no reason to believe that they were engaged in any illegal activities. Even if there were proof of these vessels carrying drugs, drug trafficking is a crime, so it's a criminal law enforcement matter. It's absolutely patently illegal for the United States military to summarily execute someone just because they are suspected of engaging in drug trafficking. All right, this is an interesting question. Why are you getting involved with an international matter? I think I'd resist calling this case an international matter. I think this is a case at bottom about whether our government can use its military to engage in arbitrary violence, kill civilians with total impunity. To my mind, that cuts to the core of our identity as a country. We're seeing that logic at work in so many places. In this case, it's in the Caribbean Sea, but in other cases, it's on the streets of Minneapolis. So we think it's vitally important to fight that logic everywhere and to demonstrate that ordinary people are not pawns in Trump's politics of spectacle. Thank you so much for your thoughtful questions about this work. And if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And remember to like and subscribe. Thanks.